It is my absolute honor to introduce to the stage a very dear friend of mine. I want you guys to get louder than you have all night long for the one and only Ruth Banks.
How are we doing tonight, Arlington? I am so glad y'all are here. I want to start by addressing the obvious. I've got a little ice cream stain. There's a hole from the joint I was having earlier. And I would be more embarrassed, but I had ice cream in a joint earlier, so I'm pretty chill. I'm in this brace because I had spinal surgery recently. I really lucked out with this brace because first they were going to put me in this different brace. It was like a thick plastic and it was a mold of my body, which if there's one thing a woman in her late 20s doesn't need to see, it's a mold of her body. Like, you know your fitness goals are not going according to plan when your customized back brace has a belly pouch. When they were measuring me for it, I was like, should I suck in? He was like, do not suck in. I'm gonna have a tough time. But then when it came time for the surgery, my surgeon walked in the day of and was like, what's that? Pointing at the brace. And I was like, that's my brace that I took 2 trips to Houston to have custom made for me. And he was like, oh, no, you just need this thing you can buy on Amazon. Like, okay. Great, I love that. This brace, I lucked out. It's a little more, I had a DM I got that said that this brace perfectly frames my boobs. I will say, though, it gives a whole new definition to a muffin top. And I can justify anything now. I am insufferable since having surgery. Like, if I want another bowl of ice cream, I had spinal surgery. I earned it. If there's a social obligation I want to get out of, like I had my back cut open. What do you expect from me? You know? And if I want to commit a little vehicular manslaughter, like, what are they going to do? Arrest me? I can't put my hands behind my back. I'm kidding. I can't drive in the brace. Also, I can't bother to get arrested. I can't get arrested because I might run into my ex. I know. You're wondering, like, is he a cop or a criminal? Which is worse? Up until recently, I was dating a cop. I know. I'm autistic. I took fuck the police literally. That's on me. That's my bad. And it was this real tense relationship because, like, I smoke a lot of weed. So I had to hide my weed from him, and he was hiding his wife from me. I know people always ask me, they're like, how did you not know he was married? How did you date him and not know? I'll tell you, I'm very dumb. I didn't know his last name. I know. He gave me some real reasons that played on my empathy for why I couldn't know it, so I let it slide. But when I finally found out, we were staying in a hotel room together, and I did some Nancy Drew shit and figured out his last name and did a Google search, meaning it to be a fun bit. I found a wedding registry website. So we were staying in that hotel room together. So I start packing my stuff. I'm trying to get out of there as quick as possible. I don't think he would hurt me, but I also didn't think he was married. So what do I know, you know? And now that I know the full truth, I do feel better about it. He couldn't give me his last name. Somebody else already had it. And sometimes when I talk about that, people are expecting me to name and shame him. They want to know his first and last name and badge number, and I get that. Here's what I'll say. I have dirt on a cop, and I break the law a lot. I am keeping that shit to myself. I will name this guy, though. There's a guy named Dakota that I used to work with, and he was an absolute asshole. Do you mind if I tell you about Dakota real quick? Hell yeah. So he was my assistant manager at the place where I was the general manager. And he really felt that in order to be a good manager, you had to be physically capable of doing the job you're managing. And I understand that perspective, but you wouldn't expect that of a pimp. I mean, how would that even work? Like no fur coat without the fishnets? Can't work the pimp cane till you can work the pole? And no bitch slaps till you can make that ass clap, right? It got so bad that me and Dakota and our regional manager had to have a little sit-down meeting. And during that meeting, Dakota said that he just couldn't respect somebody less physically capable than him. I know. But he tried to sleep with 2 of my employees and couldn't get it up either time. So maybe he's not the one who should be talking about physical capabilities. That last part is just there to let you know there's a Dakota in Dallas who can't get it up. We'll keep the name and shame train going. I dated a guy named Gregor in high school. His name was Gregor, and he cheated on me. And it just so happened that the girl he cheated on me with, my previous boyfriend had also cheated on me with. And up until that point, we had never met. Like, we didn't even have a love triangle. We just had the recycling logo. But when we finally did meet, we looked at each other and we were like, you know, we've got a lot of common interests. And now we've been best friends for a decade. And I like to keep Gregor around too, if I'm being honest. There's a few reasons. I'll sell you on this. Even though he cheated on me, it is great to keep somebody around who has wronged you. I don't know if this is a relatable, but this is a strategy y'all should take on in your lives. Like anytime I need something from him, if we're hanging out and I want him to get up and get me some water, and if he says no, I'm like, Gregor, you cheated on me. And like if I need to commit a little vehicular manslaughter, he'll be the one driving, you know? I also keep him around because he has a great taste in women. On top of bringing me my best friend by cheating on me with her, the woman he is now married to is also one of my best friends. And I know you still think it's strange that I'm friends with Gregor, but consider it this way. You know, I made 2 really good friendships for the low, low price of getting cheated on once. It is hard to make friends as an adult. I will justify that. The real reason that Gregor and I became friends again, because in all honesty, we didn't talk for like 5 years after that. You need some break when somebody does that to you, you know? But I found out through his mom's Facebook page that he also got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means he's not my 1 in a million, he was just my 1 in 5,000. For those of you who don't know, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder. It is passed down genetically, and it is the reason I had to get spinal surgery. It weakens your joints, your connective tissue, all that good stuff. I say that, it makes me very bendy. I know, that's an awful symptom to have of a debilitating disorder, because any guy you tell about it, he's just like, oh, you must be good in bed. Like, they always think that until they're in bed with me, and then I'm like, oh, dislocated a hip. Like, you know, a cramp in bed is bad, but a whole hip, that's an ordeal. So I always say the full name, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because if I just say EDS, people think I mean erectile dysfunction syndrome. And that's not me, that's Dakota. The other reason I say the full name is because I would bet most of you in here have no fucking idea what Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is. And I just need a little name recognition. Let me explain to you how this works in the whole disorders medical field. You got to have the name recognition to get the sympathy. You got to have the sympathy to get the funding dollars, and you got to have the funding dollars to figure out what the hell's going on. Because let me tell you, so few people seem to know what is going on with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. If you actually Google how many people have Ehlers-Danlos, you will get 4 different results. You'll get 1 in 2,500, 1 in 5,000, 1 in 200,000, 1 in 600,000. And you can say what you want, that it's that many, but I don't know 2,500 people even, but I do know my, 4 high school classmates, my 3 sorority sisters, my 2 ex-boyfriends, and a partridge in a pear tree that all also have EDS. So either those numbers are wrong or I'm contagious. That's the problem with the doctors not knowing much about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It puts me in this weird position because I lucked out. I did get diagnosed by a doctor. And then my best friend at the time was pre-med. So they studied it, taught it to me, and now I know so much about what's wrong with me, and that is the best gift anybody possibly could have given me. But it also means now I'm just out in the world seeing people with screaming signs of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome with no idea what to do about it. Because what am I going to do? Tell them to go see a doctor? You may think I'm exaggerating. One time after I was diagnosed, I went to see this rheumatologist. And she, obviously you waited 45 minutes because it's a doctor's office and they don't respect your time. But then when she did come in there, she asked me how to spell Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, typed it into Google, and pulled up the Wikipedia page. I paid $75 for Dr. WikiHow. Wiki what? I don't want that. Oh my gosh. So you end up in this position because it's not really societally acceptable to just walk up and throw diagnoses at people. So I always feel like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is kind of like an MLM. You gotta know someone to get in it. I'm just out in the world hey girly. Have you ever heard of EDS? That's my sales pitch, folks. That's my sales pitch. Speaking of being contagious, I have autism. That was an awful joke. Please don't let me spread misinformation. Autism is not contagious. I was that kid who was cruising around on Heelys blasting Phantom of the Opera in my noise-canceling headphones what? Autism? Never heard of it. I used to have these big meltdowns about the toe seams of my socks to the point that my parents could only buy me Nordstrom brand socks. I'm not bougie, I'm just autistic, and sometimes it's the same thing. But they bought me Nordstrom brand socks my entire childhood, and I honestly feel like an autism evaluation would have been cheaper. And this is actually the sad thing. I was evaluated, but I was evaluated during the time when it was autism's a boy thing. Sure, I don't like trains, but I like Taylor Swift too much. Doesn't mean I'm not autistic. And they're also she can make eye contact, so she's fine. Meanwhile, I'm here left eye, 2, 3, 4, right eye, 2, 3, 4, nose, 2, 3, 4. Don't look at their lips, they'll think you want to kiss them. So just like how I'm having to constantly explain to people what Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is, I feel like I'm constantly having to explain to people what being a woman with autism means. Because people have this understanding for what autism is, and I'm not going to say it's wrong because it is based in a type of autism that does exist, but autism is a spectrum. There are lots of types of autism that exist, and we've only been paying attention to a few for a long time. So now I kind of have to be this canary in the coal mine where I exist and people kind of doubt me, and then I have to redefine their expectations. So then the next autistic woman they come across, then she gets more understanding than, I did. And I think that's really what all of us are kind of doing on Earth, is just being permission slips for each other to make things easier for people like us that come later.
And I feel like when they really should have caught it was when I came home from my exchange trip from Sweden. I was very lucky, got to visit Sweden when I was like 13. And all of the other Americans that came back with me, they declared at customs, like, oh, I've got Swedish chocolate and a postcard from my mom. And I was like, I've got a kilo of cheese and a petrified moose poop necklace. Like, you gonna let me back in the country, or? You also gotta be really careful with the advice you give autistic people. Like, my mom gave me some very important advice one time, very crucial, and I'm actually happy to pass it along to you guys now. She gave me the advice that when you're making nachos, you always wanna use more cheese than you think you need. Great advice normally, but I'm autistic. So now every time I make nachos, my perception of how much cheese I need shifts up. And so I add more. And at this point, we would all agree I have objectively too much cheese. My mom is a very cool lady. She cares a lot about me. She tries to keep me safe. Like, whenever I spend the night at a house that is not my own, she will text me the next morning, like, trivia questions to confirm it is actually me answering. And not like some psycho kidnapper. But the problem is they're all family trivia questions. They're not like Taylor Swift trivia, So one time she asked me what her middle name was before she got married, and I did not know. So I had to find a way to convince her that I hadn't been kidnapped, I was just a bad daughter. And we're talking about dating, so I'm going to say this before we say anything else. Like, don't approach women in public. Like, if you see a woman just minding her business, do not go up and hit on her. Unless she's me. Please, for the love of God, I think I'm going to die alone. Like, also, even if you're not the one, I need the practice. Because there's all sorts of social interactions you run into in dating that I'm not prepared for. Like, my most recent date, I had a guy tell me that he had a dead aunt, also named Ruth. And I had to act like I didn't already know that from his Instagram. I hadn't, like, practiced that facial expression in the mirror enough. I was just there like, don't look at his lips. And I tend to have a habit of giving up on things if I'm not immediately good at them, which is why I haven't tried dating women since college. I am trying to date women now, but it's really scary. Like, getting rejected by women is so much worse because I actually like them. And I also feel like women oftentimes don't want to date a woman who hasn't dated women before, It's a lot of times like you're trying to apply for a job that requires experience, but you need the job to get experience. I'm gonna have to get some friends to be fake references, like, yeah, she made me a really great picnic and she clipped her nails, so.
I feel very fortunate with the crowd I got to record in front of, because with Screwed, it was a lot of people who had been, friends and family. Some of them had come from long distances away, whereas Brace, we didn't tell people it was happening. We dropped a few hints on social media, like it's gonna be a really special night, but there really wasn't a whole crowd of people there expecting me.
But they were all so supportive and so kind. I could not have asked for a better reception. I think it's totally reasonable to say the fact that we recorded at 1851 plays a big part in why the crowd was so supportive, because it's not just about the fact that I talked about being a member of the LGBTQ community in the performance, but they also are just an incredibly supportive community. So they had my back, so to speak. And we kind of decided to approach this with the energy of just creating what we could in the time when it needed to be created. We didn't have all the time in the world to build out the perfect production. We didn't have multiple attempts at this, and I didn't have the stamina to do multiple attempts. There were so many unknowns just because of my physical situation. Like, I could have gotten on stage and felt awful and just not performed as well as I wanted to. I could have gotten on stage and forgotten everything and just been really embarrassing and stuttering for an hour, and I could have never wanted to release it. So we decided to give me some flexibility by not announcing it, to then on the back end say, I hate this, I don't want this to see the light of day. So it gave us some flexibility there by just letting it be whatever it was going to be. And I think there's something beautiful to that, because if you put all of these restrictions and this expectation of perfectionism on everything you're doing, especially when there's a disability involved, things just aren't going to get done. You have to be able to accept a certain level of imperfection.
The day after my surgery, I got a notification from Bumble that said, try speed dating now. Like, Bumble, I'm not speed walking yet. Give me a sec. But I'm not dating much right now in general for obvious reasons. But I do think I have some good moves I could use if I was dating. And honestly, this just makes everything awkward. Like, I normally head nod when I see people. But if I head nod in this, it's just... And if I want to, like, drink something without a straw, I can only bend back so far, so I got to sit in my recliner and just, like... And if I have my hair up and I want to take it down and shake it out, it's like... That's how I was the entire Taylor Swift concert, if anybody wanted an image. I did get to see Taylor Swift live. It was incredible. If I look suspiciously like I have a will to live, that's why. I love Taylor Swift so much. I actually have one of my favorite memories with the best friend that I made through Gregor cheating on me. We go to Taylor Swift concerts together. And the first one we went to together, we decided beforehand we wanted to see if a bong could be turned into a pumpkin. I said that wrong. I haven't smoked any pumpkin bongs today, I promise. We decided we wanted to see if we could turn a pumpkin into a bong. And we did. We were successful. It's a new kind of pumpkin spice, but the spice is weed. And I had a great situation a year later after we made that. I was hanging out with a girls' night group of girls, and they were like, oh my God, guys, do you think it would be possible to turn a pumpkin into a bong? And I was like, y'all are not going to believe this. I have this exact set of skill sets. Bippity boppity boo, bitches, you got your bong. I do want to talk more about Taylor Swift for a second. She's got this line in her music that I love. I want to get it tattooed. It's the line, long story short, I survived. Yeah, I think it's really powerful. Like, I could look at it in the hard times. It'd be really encouraging and really funny at my funeral. There are several concerts I've seen in this brace so far, and I've learned that the ADA section, like the accessible section in these concert venues, are all first come, first serve. Because how better to determine one's accessibility than a foot race? I don't even know what to do about that. And okay, I appreciate you guys letting me rant. This is a thought that has plagued me. Before we take on developing AI, how about we try making a printer that actually works? I literally had a printer at my job one time pop up a notification that said, this printer will stop working in 2 weeks. That's when I knew I needed to quit. Like, if the printer's putting in its 2 weeks, I am too. It knows something I don't.
It's interesting because the first surgery was kind of my catalyst to get into stand-up comedy because I spent so much time stuck in bed just watching stand-up comedy specials and really falling in love with it. And it was a good escape for me while I was dealing with all that pain. And so I kind of decided that I wanted to be able to be that escape for somebody else. And so now the second time around, I'm getting to do that. And I think that's part of why I was so driven to create this so quickly and while I was still in the back brace, because it really gave me the purpose and the ability to fulfill the purpose that I had set out to do when I first started.
So I really think I handled this whole spinal surgery thing like a comic, like a real comic, you know? In that I posted a bunch of jokes online but was miserable to be around in person. Because the day you get surgery is a lot like your birthday, you know? In that you always overestimate how many people are gonna message you. And I want to both give a shout out to nurses because nurses are amazing. But the ones who suck have so much power over vulnerable people. It's such a catch-22 because I love most of you, but the ones that are a problem are a problem. Like, I actually ended up with like my whole hand being yellow for a good 2 or 3 weeks after leaving the hospital because I pissed this nurse off. Like, she and I got into a conflict. She was trying to get me to take my pain meds and I didn't want to take them yet, which feels like a reasonable request. But she ended up getting her manager involved. It was a whole thing. And when she yanked my IV out, she tore the adhesive off. The IV came halfway out. She shoved it back in, took the rest of the adhesive off, and tore it off. I know. That's why I wonder if maybe nursing school should be more like beauty school. Like, I want the instructors to be like, you better find 5 friends who need stitches by Friday or give friends reasons to get stitches by Friday. And like in beauty school, you've got to buy your own tools. Maybe if the nurses bought their own needles, they would be a little more careful with how many times they're sticking me. Also, nurses, just like hairdressers, if one of them is bad, that's not just going to ruin your day, it could ruin your next 3 months. This wasn't the first time I got spinal surgery. I also got spinal surgery back in college. Spinal surgery for me is a lot like a keg stand. I didn't think I'd have to do it again after college, but I'm figuring it out. I'm doing okay. I can still pull it off. College is an interesting time to get spinal surgery because, like, you're in this big brace, but you've also got a party to go to on Friday. Like that Halloween, I crushed as Humpty Dumpty. Not to brag. But I do want to say this. Like, I'm not saying you can't find love in a neck brace. But I am saying that if you're like a college guy and you're staring across the grimy frat house dance floor and you lock eyes with me, I don't think you see like beauty. I think you see the weak one in the pack that's gonna get picked off first. Like, I'm not a hookup, I'm prey. He just wants to tell everyone he blew my back out, you know? And the other thing about college that really stuck with me was I had this English teacher. He really helped me during my surgery time. We really bonded. And this one piece of advice that he gave me was that I needed to be more like Hemingway. Like, I need to fully feel my emotions, let my emotions run through me. But you know what else Hemingway did? He killed himself. And I'm starting to wonder if that English teacher really liked me that much. Because I am a lot like Hemingway. We both tried to kill ourselves. He was more successful than me, though, in many ways. No, I'll tell this story real quick if you guys will let me. I was in college. I was dealing with the spinal surgery recovery. It's real lonely during that time because the good people in your life, they're all really scared to say or do the wrong thing. So sometimes they kind of just get silent and leave. And that's a big bummer, especially because the bad people in your life sense weakness. And they swim to that shit like a shark to blood in the water. So I did have a suicide attempt during that time. The reason people found me and the reason I was okay was because after taking the pills, I sat up in a blind panic and realized I was gonna miss rehearsal. I don't remember doing this, but apparently I typed out an email to the director saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm going to miss rehearsal today. I've taken too many of my pills." Signed, Ruth Banks. And that's when I knew I needed to leave the theater program, because if I didn't feel entitled to a little me time during my suicide attempt, it's not a healthy relationship. Thank you guys for letting me get that off my chest. Speaking of getting things off my chest, I had a breast reduction earlier this year. Hell yeah! Y'all are more enthusiastic than my insurance company was. They were not having it. But I had a really good time with the breast reduction. Like I said, the brace perfectly frames them, so it's okay if you look. I'm giving you permission. Don't feel weird. Thank you. These were 4 pounds heavier. They took 4 pounds of weight off of these. Do you understand? That's insane. And anyways, I had the best doctor for the breast reduction. I know I've talked about the importance of medical professionals being good, and this is a good one. Because, there's a lot of stress that goes with getting a breast reduction, because when you have a large chest, a lot of the way you view yourself as attractive gets tied up in that. I got real attached to the fact that if you wanted to take a picture of me, it had to be in landscape mode. And it really wraps you up. It becomes part of your identity, your identity. But this surgeon just made me really comfortable, which I appreciated. And this is the last thing I'll talk about before I get out of here. But this surgeon, there's a part where they have to draw on you beforehand. And I was surprised to find out they did it while you're awake, because that just seems awkward. But thinking about it, it would be creepier if they doodled on you in your sleep. So I guess that makes sense. And everything they draw, it's real scientific, but it also looks like it could be etched into a middle school boy's desk. And to draw it, they've got to get everything in place. So he had to lift everything up. And the man was a little dramatic about it. He was swooping and scooping and huffing and puffing and lifting, and I was we don't have to do all that, doc. But when he was down there, I looked down at him and I said, I told my ex-boyfriend that he was going to be the one who got the honor of last touching my boobs in this form. But I guess that honor goes to you. He looked back at me without missing a beat and said, "Yep, I'll be the last person to touch these and the first person to touch the new ones, and you can let him know." That is a good doctor, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much. I'm Ruth Banks. Thank you for being here.